Coming up, where does the Merrill Kelly and Zac Gallen duo rank in all of baseball? And Sully Baseball and I will now do our confidence power rankings for the American League. Which teams do we have the most trust in to make it to the World Series? Discussing all that next.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day listening to the always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account. Look up the show account, Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram. And of course, we are on YouTube, Locked On Diamondbacks there as well. Of course, on all podcasting platforms as well. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. Sully Baseball and I will do our confidence power rankings for the American League teams that we think are most likely to make it to the World Series and who we think could take out some of those Goliaths in the American League, who we think the Davids are in the AL. But before we get there, I thought it'd be fun to just do a little fun conversation about where does the Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly frontline rotation duo rank in all of baseball compared to other duos around baseball. Where does our duo rank among the best? I'm talking about this season right now, how they're pitching. I'm not saying overall the last 5 years, their careers. I'm saying right now, who has been the best duos in baseball this season? Where does Merrill Kelly and Zac Gallen rank? And it's not going to be a straight up 1, 2, 3 power ranking. We're actually going to do it by tier-based power ranking because I felt like that was easier to do than actually trying to rank them 10 to 1 or however. So let's first start with the top tier, and the D-backs are not in this tier. This is the tier called clearly better than the D-backs duo, and in this tier, I have the Houston Astros because if you look at the Astros, and before I even get into the tiers in the Astros, actually, let me talk a little bit about the D-backs frontline rotation because I want to do this topic because that Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly combination, of course, has been fantastic so far this season. Zac Gallen's got a 3.12 ERA. Merrill Kelly's got 2.86 ERA. Both got strikeouts per 9, around 8. I mean, Gallen's at 8.7. Kelly's at 7.4. They've both been pretty elite with their whip, both at 1.1 or lower. So they've been really good at not allowing base runners. They've been solid at striking out people. I think their strength this season has not been walking people. I think their strength has been not allowing base runners via walk. I think that's been the strength of those two. And for Merrill Kelly, this is by far the best Merrill Kelly we've seen. By far the best Merrill Kelly we've seen over the course of a full season, I should say, because if you remember, Merrill Kelly was a dominant beast back in the 2020 season, but he only made 5 starts, so it wasn't a full season for Merrill Kelly. And then Zac Gallen, this is probably not the best season we've seen from him because he was so dominant from 2019 to 2020, where he had that consecutive streak of going at least 6 innings and 2 earned runs or less. Like Zac Gallen to start his career was an absolute beast, but I do think he's having a really good season. There are some numbers that suggest this is, a better Zac Gallen season than in the past. When you look at his home runs allowed, his hits allowed, his walks allowed, Zac Gallen's all up in those areas, but strikeouts are down. But I think by the end of the season, we could say this is the best Zac Gallen season we've ever seen because I think we've seen maybe some higher highs from Zac Gallen this season than we've seen from other years because he has more 7-inning, 0 earned run, 7 strikeout performances this season than he's had in the past. He has more of those performances this season than any other season so far in his past. So Zac Gallen's putting together a really good season. Maybe some of the lows are lower than what we've seen in 2019 and 2020 because 2021, you just got to erase that from Zac Gallen's career. Like, I don't know who that was last year on the mound, but that was not Zac Gallen. But 2019, 2020, 2022, Zac Gallen has looked like a frontline rotation starter. And then same for Merrill Kelly. If you take out 2021, like 2 of the last 3 years, he's looked like a frontline rotation starter as well. So where does that duo rank in all of baseball. So now let's get back to our power rankings and let's get back to our tiers. And the first tier, like I said, clearly better than Gallen and Merrill Kelly. I'm going with the Houston Astros duo of Verlander and whoever you want to put second, which is probably Framber Valdez. I mean, Verlander has arguably been the best pitcher in baseball this year at 39 years old, which is just insane. And so when you take what he's doing, which is probably going to win the Cy Young. And then Valdez has basically been as good as a Merrill Kelly or Zac Gallen this season. Like, those two have been clearly better than the frontline rotation for the D-backs because Verlander has looked like the best pitcher in baseball this year. Plus, you're getting Valdez to pitch like an ace as well. Also in this tier, I have 5 teams in the clearly better than the D-backs frontline rotation tier. And the second team I have here is the Dodgers. I'm not ranking these teams in order once we get in the tiers. I'm just ranking these teams by tiers, but within the tiers, I'm not going, okay, Astros are number 1, Dodgers are number 2 within the clearly better tier. No, that doesn't matter to me. So Dodgers I got up next, and you could take any combination of Gonsolin, Urias, and Tyler Anderson because those are 3 starters, and 2 of those 3, doesn't matter the combination, have probably been better than Gallen and Merrill Kelly this season. I mean, all 3 got a sub 2.75 ERA, below a 1 WHIP, below a 3.5 FIP. ERA plus is better across the board. Like, the Dodgers rotation is nasty. Kershaw, when healthy, you could have thrown in that mix as well, which is absolutely insane. And they don't even have Walker Buehler right now. So the Dodgers rotation is stacked, as we know, and they definitely have a better front line rotation than the D-backs do. Next up, I have the Mets as a better duo as well because Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. I know deGrom's been hurt for most of the year, but even when he's been healthy this year, when Scherzer's been healthy this year, like, those are 2 of the 5 best pitchers in baseball, and they're in the same rotation. That one's pretty clearly better than the D-backs frontline rotation. Next, I got the Philadelphia Phillies, Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Both are striking out people at higher rates than Gallen and Kelly, and both don't allow as many walks either. Both of them are pretty good at not allowing base runners. They're both 2 studs as well. I think they both have higher ceilings than Merrill Kelly and Zac Gallen, and I think they've had slightly better seasons as well, both those 2 pitchers over Kelly. So I got the Phillies in the clearly better tier. And then my last team I have in the clearly better tier is the Toronto Blue Jays. And I remember at the beginning of the season when I was doing my preseason predictions with Sully Baseball, he had Jose Barrios winning the Cy Young. And Jose Barrios has just been a complete disaster this season for the Blue Jays, a 5.19 ERA and all that. But he's not in this frontline duo for the Blue Jays. It's going to be Alek Manoah, 2.56 ERA, 8.1 strikeouts per 9, 2.0 walks per 9, 1.022 WHIP. He's been phenomenal. And I'm doing Kevin Gausman, a 2.91 WHIP, 10.5 strikeouts per 9, 1.5 walks per 9. Like, that duo, I think, has been clearly better than the D-backs as well. So that's 5 teams I put in the clearly better than the D-backs tier: Astros, Dodgers, Mets, Phillies, and Blue Jays. So we know the D-backs don't have a top 5 frontline rotation. But could they have a top 6 to 10 rotation or at least duo in baseball? Well, the next tier is maybe better than. You could make an argument these duos are better than the D-backs, but if you want to tell me the D-backs are better than these duos, I wouldn't argue with you at all. The teams I have in this tier are the Atlanta Braves. Max Fried and Kyle Wright both have been great this season. I think it's pretty similar to what Gallen and Kelly have done, but I think some of the advanced numbers suggest the Braves duo has been better. Plus, ERA plus for those 2 guys combined is better than the combined ERA plus for both Kelly and Gallen, and both those guys strike out dudes at a higher rate than Kelly and Gallen as well. So I think I have the Braves slightly better than the D-backs. I also have the Yankees in this tier as well because, of course, Garrett Cole, I think, can make an argument, is the worst pitcher among the 4, but he's still Garrett Cole. He still has a pedigree to him. And I know I'm talking about this season, but even this season, he's been pretty damn good. He's been struggling his last 3 or 4 starts, so his ERA is really blown up, but he's still striking out people. I pretty much, I won the best rates in baseball as a starter. He's a true workhorse. Like, he's still been a beast, and Nestor Cortez has been phenomenal so far. He's great at striking out people and not allowing a lot of base runners as well. So I think the Yankees frontline duo might be slightly better than the D-backs as well. But like I said, you can make the D-backs. The D-backs do have an argument over the Yankees frontline duo. And then the next 2 teams, in this tier. Padres and Giants, two NL West rivals. And the Padres, of course, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove. Both of them, if you look at the numbers for Musgrove and Darvish, like just the raw numbers, they're so identical to what the D-backs are doing. But I think because Darvish and Musgrove are a little bit more workhorse people, a little bit more of a strikeout artist, those two, I'm going to slightly put them above the D-backs. Same with the Giants, because I think basically Giants, Padres, and D-backs, their frontline, their top two in those rotations, I think they basically all performed at a wash. But because the Padres and Giants got two dudes that are a little bit more adept at striking out opposing batters, which I think is a very important skill in today's game, I'm putting them slightly better than the D-backs. But if you want to tell me the D-backs are better, I would not argue with you. And next up, I have the baseline tier. And in the baseline tier, this is teams I think you can't really say are better than the D-backs, but you can't really say are worse than the D-backs. This is kind of cutoff point. This is kind of where I kind of fit the D-backs among all these rotations. Like, you could put the D-backs in the maybe better than category with the Braves and the Yankees and Padres and Giants, but the D-backs are probably more likely in this tier, the baseline tier, and that is the Tampa Bay Rays and the Chicago White Sox, because the Rays, they have Shane McClanahan, who's been a beast this year. At one point was going to win the Cy Young Award, but Justin Verlander has completely overtaken that race. But I just don't like the Rays number two. Like, they have dudes that are performing at a pretty high level to qualify and be better than the D-backs. I just don't love the options despite the production that they're putting up. I mean, it's either Drew Rasmussen or Jeffrey Springs, and those guys just have way less innings pitched than a Kelly and a Zac Gallen. Those guys haven't even cracked 100 innings pitched this season. So that's why I'm like, I can't put them in the maybe better than category than the D-backs. The other team is the Chicago White Sox, and the White Sox, like, their frontline duo probably has performed better than the D-backs, but I just couldn't do it because not Dallas Keuchel. I don't even know why. Former Chicago White Sox Dallas Keuchel, but Dylan Cease, I mean, he's been a freaking stud this year. Sub-2 ERA, 12.2 strikeouts per nine. He's been an absolute stud. But the second best starter in that rotation has probably been Johnny Cueto with 2.91 ERA. But it's like, he's Johnny Cueto. He's 36 years old. He doesn't really strike out people. And yes, in the spirit of the exercise, I should probably have the frontline duo of the White Sox ahead of the D-backs. But no, we're going to put them in the same tier because I got to make these power rankings, and that's what I'm doing. And then some teams that I had slightly under the D-backs in the honorable mention category is the Seattle Mariners. I love Luis Castillo, but Robbie Ray I don't think has been better than Gallen or Merrill this season. Marlins I got in there. Sandy Alcantara is probably the Cy Young Award winner, but I don't think Pablo Lopez has been better than Gallen or Merrill Kelly. The Guardians were really close. Maybe they should be in the White Sox Rays tier with Tristan McKenzie and Shane Bieber, but I feel like the D-backs frontline duo has been better than those two. And then the Milwaukee Brewers with Corbin Burnes and probably Brandon Woodruff. Like, Corbin Burnes, there really hasn't been an elite number two for the Brewers this season, which has been kind of surprising when you have Woodruff and Peralta and all those guys. So that's why I have them behind the D-backs as well. But the D-backs probably, I mean, I have 5 teams clearly ahead of them. I have 1, 2, 3, another 4 teams maybe better than them. And then after that, you could say the D-backs have the 10th best duo in all of baseball when you look at frontline rotation starters. So that works out for the D-backs. And when doing this exercise, you realize there's a lot of good 1 and 2 combinations in all of baseball. And the D-backs got a little bit more work to do from Gallen and Merrill Kelly if they want to crack that top 5 and get into that Dodgers, Astros, Mets range. And I think they could do it one day because I think Zac Gallen could tap into another level as he gets a little bit older, as he matures a little bit more in baseball. So D-backs right now, they're probably not top 5 duo in baseball with Gallen and Kelly, but you could definitely make the argument that they're top 10. That's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Thank you to everyone who tuned into today's podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Should have a crossover with Ethan Smith of Locked On Pirates. Hopefully the D-backs get the dub tonight and they're able to take care of the series. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Make your second listen of the day Locked On MLB with our pal Sully Baseball. And as always, deuces.